So, this is my first post. What I'm going to say happened 2 years ago. I was only 10 at the time. Even my parents don't know about what happened. But hanging here and reading other people's stories made me feel the urge to share mine as well. For context, my father, mother, little sister, and me were in Russia, in a very luxurious hostel organized like that. The entrance is a building itself from which you had to take an elevator to access a big park. From this park, you have to walk 3 to 4 minutes to arrive in front of a approximately 30-floor building. It's designed to contain one really big suite per floor. So when taking the lift, you can scan your card, and it will automatically bring you to the floor associated to it. So, the third day of our trip, my parents decided to go on a date together, leaving me and my sister alone in the suite. They had left some cash so that we could order some food, so I ordered it and waited. When somebody finally called to say that it was all ready, I went down to search for the food, and that's when I did my first big mistake. I didn't close the front door, thinking that nobody would come up here, and that I would have a lot of things in my hands, so I wouldn't be able to open it. So I called the lift and I waited. It took way too long. When it was finally here, somebody was in it and I politely said hello, but he didn't answer. He was wearing a red sweatshirt and some Adidas joggers. I pushed the 0 button and the man headed out. The doors were closing when I finally realized my second big mistake. Why the heck did he get out? He shouldn't, since there weren't any other rooms except for my family's on that floor. And that's when I started to panic. I tried to stop the lift, but it wouldn't stop. So as soon as I arrived at the ground floor, I immediately went back up to my room's floor. The front door was wide open, and the absent noise made me feel uncomfortable, assuming that either my sister had been caught or that she was hiding. I went for the second option, because the man was taller than me, which meant that his footsteps must have sounded heavier than mine on the ground, and I believed that my sister's intelligence would figure that out and that she would hide. I finally found her hiding behind one of the sofas crying. She told me that the man was searching in the luggages for valuable items. We played hide and seek with him. The room was really big for almost 30 minutes, and I finally went in my room, and I noticed that my Nintendo Switch had vanished. I called the reception to send some security guys to arrest the man. Luckily, everything went pretty smoothly, and that man turned out to be the son of somebody staying there. One creepy thing that I still think about is that he had a knife on him coming from the kitchen of our suite, showing that he didn't just want to steal some stuff. So, just a warning, this pretext is dark and depressing, and you won't unsee what you read here. If you're in a dark place, skip it. So, poverty breeds extreme measures, especially if the poor decides to mob up, form an echo chamber, that chronically downward spiraling mob mentality. Some might argue that it is where evil could be delivered. In Russia, you see quite sleepy babies with different beggars on the same subway, posing as their kids. They never cry or fuss because they're drugged. They are taken children. You also see grown-up beggars, deformed, missing bits of their legs, arms, eyes, or all of them. In our society, capable adults who can't support themselves are viewed as failures, unworthy of sympathy. Quite a few of them couldn't speak, their tongues missing. Those are the kids that try to tell their stories to strangers. Almost all of them are illiterate, but all of them were taken as children. My story wasn't that bad, not bad at all. It was 1997 and I was 5. My family had taken me on a trip, and as we were walking down a major commercial district, I saw 4 young men walking towards us, side by side, all fashionable and metropolitan looking. It's a busy street in midday, crowded indeed, but it's wide enough for 10 people to walk shoulder to shoulder, so they have no need to walk toward our side of the street. But they did. The place is a shopping district with plenty to see. My dad was walking on the right, my mom in the middle, loosely holding my hand. As men, I've mentioned, were just walking past us. I felt a firm grasp on my left forearm. They kept walking, as if nothing happens. My parents kept scrolling through the shops. I was confused by the situation, but I didn't know what to do. So I squeezed my mom's hand as hard as I could. Didn't even think about making a noise. The tug on my arm grew stronger, and I grabbed her hand harder until she turned and looked at me. The arm of the man slipped away. My mom didn't see a thing, as I still couldn't find the words to describe what happened. Years later, as I was in college, I told her this story. Like I said, it wasn't nearly as bad as many of the things I've heard or seen. But that day, I was that close to being taken and never seen again. This incident happened in the summer of 2015. I lived by myself in a nice house inside a small town. Low crime, but still the occasional shady guy. Anyway, I'd worked that day on a smoke break. I watched a dog get thrown from a moving vehicle. 4-lane city traffic during the start of rush hour. I ran out there to scoop the little guy up and booked it back to my workplace. He wasn't injured, amazingly. As an animal lover, I decided to take him home with me until I could figure out what to do with him. I have a large amount of cats, and I always have. This was my first experience with a dog that I was solely responsible for. Now this guy was very shy. Head hung, tail tucked, jumpy. Just looking at me like I was about to do something to him. I was clueless on the subject of dog personalities and tendencies. I just knew that they needed to be taken out frequently. His first night with me, we had been out about 15 times, as I didn't want him doing it in my house. I was having the final cigarette of the day on my porch around 10:30. The dog was on a lead, chilling under my chair as I smoked and poked about on Reddit. I see a man walking on the sidewalk that runs by my house. He kept glancing up at me before passing. Shortly after he passed my house, he stopped, turned on his heel and approached. "Hey, can you tell me where 302 Church Street is?" he asked. I told him that I would look it up on my phone, which of course was taking a minute to pull up. He explained that he didn't have a phone of his own and he was attempting to get to a friend's house, taking small steps towards me the entire time. Finally, the address I summoned came up. "Hey, it's exactly 2 blocks north of here, right on the southwest corner of the cross street," I told him, pointing in the direction. He kept his eyes locked on me, continuing to slowly move closer. The doggo starts growling very softly at this point. I had forgotten he was even there until now. "Mind if I take a look at the map?" He grinned sheepishly. "I'm bad with directions." I rose from my seat, pointing again. "It's truly just 2 blocks up this road. Just follow the road 2 blocks. The house will be on your left," making it very clear that I wasn't going to just hand him my phone. "Well, can I call them? I need to let them know that I'm coming," he said, still creeping closer, extending his hand. "No," I curtly replied. "How about text him?" Pushing forward still. "Dude, no." I started toward my door. Just let me see your phone." He was visibly becoming upset, clearly trying to contain it, and getting way too close to my porch. As a last-ditch effort of getting this dude to get away from me, I say, "You need to get the heck out of my yard. My dog is protective and he'll mess you up." Heck, I didn't know the first thing about this dog, let alone whether he had the capacity to mess someone up. I just hoped saying so would intimidate the pushy phone guy. Like I had said the magic words, the pupper springs into action. A la the wolf creature from the never-ending story, he emerges like a bullet from under the chair, growling and snarling, barking his little butt off. He jerks me near off the porch, trying to get at this guy. He sounded and acted like an 80-pound attack dog, not a 40-pound timid beagle mix. I was afraid. I didn't know if the pup would turn on me. As stated previously, at the time, I knew absolutely nothing about dogs. He backed his hindquarters into my legs, almost nudging me to the door, still carrying on. Eyes locked on phone dude and baring his teeth. Phone dude holds up his hands and backs off, stammers something like, 2 blocks north, yeah? And begins walking that way. I go inside, cut off my lights, and I peek out the window at him. He glances at my house, assured that I'm inside, turns and begins walking the completely opposite direction that I pointed him in. Icing on the cake. He pulls a phone from his pocket and raises it to his ear to make a call. The dog is secured in his place as a member of my family that night. He is incredibly protective of me, and has frightened away another creep since this incident. He is attached at my hip, and has made it known that he is grateful to be in a safe, loving home, wherein he will never again become a projectile from a moving vehicle. His name is Hank, and I truly believe that night would have ended very poorly for me had he not been there. I'm a 22-year-old female, and I go to a university with a fairly large campus. There are 2 bus stops, one newer one near the main part of campus, and the older one at the end of the parking area by the vet buildings. I usually use the new one, but I used to have a lecture that ended at 6:30 p.m. that was in one of the vet buildings, and I didn't want to have to walk up a hill to the new one when the old stop was so close. That decision almost got me into a world of trouble. So, it was already dark and starting to rain a little bit. The stop didn't have any bus shelter back then, and it wasn't well illuminated, as there was only the one streetlight off to the side. They've since updated it and it's well lit. I was standing under my umbrella in the near darkness, praying for a bus when, lo and behold, a bus arrived. But as I got closer, my heart sank. Not in service was flashing across the sign on the front. It was going to just go past me. But then the driver must have seen how miserable I had looked, or maybe he realized how dangerous it was when I hadn't. Either way, he decided to stop. He pulled over and told me to hop in, and to not bother tagging on, so I even got a free ride. So I hopped off at the station and I thanked him profusely, and I made my way home none the wiser. The next day, I told my friend what had happened, and she had told me this. About 5 minutes after I got on that bus, a girl was attacked near her car about 10 meters from where I had been standing. She luckily got away and ran back to the vet buildings, and the guy took off. I don't know if they ever caught him. I have to wonder if that guy was there while I waited for the bus, and what would have happened if that angel of a driver hadn't picked me up. Would I have been attacked instead of her? That thought chills me to the bone, and I don't use that stop unless I'm with a friend now, and certainly not after dark. This happened today. If you need a visual, I'm female in my late 20s but look young for my age. I'm 5 foot, admittedly on the plumper side of mixed race, and was in work-appropriate shorts and a shirt. For a number of reasons, I take the bus to and from work, and today was no exception. Thanks to what's been going on around the world, the ones I use run every hour. So I've changed from taking 2 buses to just one, and walking the rest of the way. It started off fine, but thanks to progressively worse situations culminated into what happened today, I'm rethinking my commute. The first time that I saw him was this morning on my way to work. I had just gotten off the bus and was walking towards the crosswalk, passing small stores and parking areas as usual. For context, I have clinical anxiety, and to keep myself calm when I'm traveling to and from work, I have earbuds in playing music, so I didn't hear the specifics of what he was saying. At first, I ignored the shouting, figuring someone was just upset that these shops were still closed. But it kept going as I got closer, so I turned off my music in case something was off. Spoilers, it was. The shouting came from a man young enough to not have noticeable gray in his long, dark brown hair and beard, most likely homeless and not wearing a mask. If he was dirty or greasy with holes or stains in his clothing, I couldn't tell you because I was focused on getting to work with time to spare. When I turned my music off, I realized that he was shouting at me, calling me a B as I passed him, telling me to keep going like I just insulted his mother. I've been told not to engage with someone who seems mentally unstable, so not wanting to aggravate him anymore, I stayed quiet. He kept shouting as I got further away, even as I was on the other side of the street, with me keeping my music off just in case he decided to follow me, not even looking back until I couldn't hear him anymore. I would have chalked it up to a weird encounter had it been a one-time thing, but things got worse when work was over, and I was heading towards the bus stop that would take me home. Again, earbuds were in, music playing. Only this time my legs were bordering on tormenting me for being on my feet for hours. You gotta love retail. As I got closer to the stop, I noticed that someone was there as well. I brushed it off, hoping it wasn't another pothead talking to himself, or a guy who didn't know about being in the middle of a pandemic. Nope, it was worse. The shouting guy from this morning. And he was still shouting. Even without my anxiety, I was scared. I didn't have a lot of options, and I'll admit the one I picked wasn't the best one. I turned off my music once again and kept walking to the bus stop, figuring that he would let me pass like last time. Another nope. In the hours that had passed, he had claimed the bus stop and didn't want anyone else there. I was a foot away from the bus stop bench when he gets close, shouting how I was a B and a C, and that this was his bus stop, pointing behind me to turn around and to go back. I didn't think that he would get close enough to feel his spittle hit my face, threatening to break my sunglasses as he stood in front of me, moving left and right when I did to avoid him. While this was going on, a woman and her wheelchair-bound son, someone that I've seen around, were coming out of the McDonald's beside the stop. The son was noticeably special needs and was moaning at the man's loud shouting. He then directed his insults at the son, which made him moan louder. On one hand, I wanted to kick him below the belt and stand my ground as he cried on the sidewalk. On the other hand, I'm much too passive, shocked, and desperate to avoid conflict of any kind. So I took several steps away from the man, keeping quiet and trying to think of what to do. Enter the hero of this tale. The guy with the dog and who I assume was his daughter. I remember him asking me if the man was keeping me from the bus. I didn't say anything. Not sure why, but it could have been a protective measure. I might have nodded, but I'm not sure. The guy confronted the shouting man who had no intention of leaving. Then the guy passes these dog's leash to the girl before shoving the man in the chest. The fight, or whatever it was, lasted for a few seconds before the shouting man turned around and walked away, the situation ending with the trio walking away, the woman and son leaving, me sitting down until the bus arrived 2 minutes later, and the shouting man far away from us all. I'm safe at home now, the shock worn off as well as the heart-racing panic from the situation. Needless to say, I hope I never see the shouting man again, but to the man who drove him away, thank you so much.